What if the real barrier to intimacy isn't your partner, but what you were taught to believe about yourself? We gonna get into it. Let's get it! Welcome. First of all, welcome. This is Unsolicited Perspectives. I am your host, Bruce Anthony, here to lead the conversation in important events and topics that are shaping today's society. Join the conversation and follow us wherever you get your audio podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for our video podcast, YouTube exclusive content, and our YouTube membership. Rate, review, like, comment, share. Share with your friends, share with your family, hell, even share with your enemies. On today's episode, I'll be interviewing Dr. Tiffany Stanley, and we're going to be talking about intimacy. But that's enough of the intro. Let's get to the show. You know, there are certain conversations people want to have, but they don't always know where to start them. Conversations about intimacy, about desire, about connection, about the things that we were taught to keep quiet, even in our own relationships. But today, we're going to go there. My guest today is Dr. Tiffany Stanley, a psychotherapist, clinical sexologist, and relationship expert with more than 2 decades of experience helping individuals and couples navigate emotional well-being, identity, and intimacy. Her work focuses on helping people move out of shame, confusion, and disconnection, and into deeper understanding of themselves and how they show up in relationships. We're going to talk about why so many people struggle to feel connected to their partners, and sometimes even to themselves. We're going to get into the realities of long-term relationships, how life changes can reshape intimacy, and why honest communication is often harder than we think. We'll also touch on the cultural messages many of us grew up with, especially around sexuality, and how these beliefs continue to shape the way we love, trust, and relate to one another. This is one of those conversations that can make you reflect on your own experiences, past relationships, current dynamics, and even relationship with yourself. So sit back, lean in, and get ready to learn. Without further ado, Dr. Tiffany Stanley. As I said at the top, I'm here with Dr. Tiffany Stanley. We're talking about intimacy, relationships, all the stuff that's not supposed to be taboo, but is a little bit. But I'm really excited to have Dr. Stanley on because I know from my personal life, maybe not directly my personal life, but the people in my orbit, that intimacy in relationships is a big deal. And I feel like when people listen and watch this, they're going to learn so much. So Dr. Stanley, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I'm looking forward to learning. I'm looking forward to growing as a person. I'm looking forward for my audience to do the same. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're so welcome. I'm glad to be here.
I always start every interview with, let's go back.
Okay.
So the first question I want to ask is, where did you grow up? What was your household like? And what kind of experience shaped you to become the person that you are today?
Okay. Well, I grew up in a military family. My dad was a high-ranking officer, military.
Okay.
So you can imagine what the home life as far as that looked like. Very traditional. Because he was in the military, we moved around a little bit in the beginning. So I'm from New Orleans, but then moved to Puerto Rico. And so I was there for 7+ years, mainly my formative years, elementary, middle school, most of high school. So I had that experience of being the kind of minority and being the gringo, right? So the blonde and didn't look like everybody. And I think that experience of living in Puerto Rico and then moving to Texas, which is where I've been since, really gave me a view of just being like trying to adapt and the need for like connections and of course when you're moving it's gotta do that quickly too. So in addition to that, with my father being military and that traditional sort of home life, mom was stay-home mom, dad ran the show and the finances and all of those pieces. So that's kind of my early years, and I think those formative years really made me look about relationships and roles and what I perceived as inequality, and things like that. So, and then since then, I've been in Texas and been married and divorced and have two adult sons. And so, yeah, it's been a life journey. Been all over the place. But I think people often surprised when they meet me and they're like, "You grew up where?"
Hmm.
But yeah, that's part of the journey.
Being a military kid, this is one of those detours I told you at the top that I might take. Being a military kid, I was not a military kid, but I can identify with military kids because we moved around so much. I went to,
Mhm,
I think it was 4 different elementary schools, 2 different middle schools, and 3 different high schools, right? Like we moved
mhm.
around so much. And talking about intimacy and connection, one of the things, and I don't know if you have siblings, that was going to be my next question.
I d
Me and my brother and sister are so close because we move so much, but
mm,
also I don't have a problem with ending things. Another because I learned that this person can be your friend today, but I would might have to move next week, and I will never see this person again because this was in the 80s and 90s, and
yeah.
technology wasn't a thing. Do you feel like growing up as a military kid, moving around, going from New Orleans to Puerto Rico to Texas, that that may have led to some connection issues because you had to move around so much and that nobody is really there for long?
Yeah, yeah, well, speaking about siblings, I do have 2 sisters, and we're very, very close, and a lot of
Mhm.
times people, will go, "Gosh, that's so, unusual," because y'all are, like, best friends, and we are, and I think part of that is because we had to rely on each other,
Right, right.
we were our constants, and and like what you were saying about, intimacy and connecting is that you didn't know when you were moving again, or if you were gonna get stationed someplace else and you gotta pack up all your stuff and you'll never see those people again, or the likelihood of it. So, it made me very adaptable, meaning that, I'm comfortable meeting people and getting to know people, but I do think it does impact, like, intimacy, or there is that little piece of, like, well, you may not meet them again, or you could be friends now. And, if we grow in different directions, we may not be friends anymore. So I think that's a different experience than a lot of people that kind of stay in one place. And, I kind of envy the friends I have that have had friends since they were kids. And I'm like, I have no, other than my sisters, that's not my story.
Mm,
I don't remember the friends from New Orleans or, 'cause I was always moving, so
yeah.
and same thing with Puerto Rico, when we moved from Puerto Rico to Texas, that was a drastic cultural change first, but then, I had to make new friends, and again, I was coming from Puerto Rico with all that cultural experience and also the blonde girl, but also very tan, and I going to school that was primarily Black and, standing out again,
Mm.
and, so I do agree that it does impact your ability to feel connection and then that sort of security of that connection.
So, just like you and your sisters, me and my brother and sister are very, very close. Like I do an episode a week with my sister. The audience knows how close I am with my sister. I am just as close with my brother. We have a strong bond. And I remember when I was married, that my ex-wife was able to join the group, right? Even though now my brother and sister trying to claim that she wasn't. She was. Then she
We
was.
find out things later.
Yeah. Do you think that closeness with your sisters affected relationships with other people, not even just romantic,
Mm,
friendships and romantic and everything in between, because you have this bond that you could say, well, no matter what, I know my people are over here. Y'all are never going to
mhm,
get to this level.
mhm.
And if that's the case, did you see intimidation from friends or partners, romantic partners, with the closeness with your sister?
Mm, um, well, we definitely are that tight tribe, if you will.
Hmm.
And we joke, but it's also serious, is that if you don't fit in, you're just not going to fit in.
Right.
It's if you don't click with the group, like, if you don't get our jokes, if you don't love to dance, if you don't like all these things, you're just not going to fit very well.
Hmm.
So, and I think the partners that have come into my life and they've they've either fit or they haven't. And so you got another question though. That was, how does that impact friendships and like intimidation? Can you tell me more about what you're asking there so I can make sure?
I know that when, for instance, me and my brother and sister had a party,
Mm-hmm.
and one of my siblings grouping of friends, I don't want to single out anybody, one of my siblings grouping of friends saw how close we were,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, "Oh, I thought we were like siblings, but I see now
Mm-hmm.
there's a different level." So that's what I'm saying, because some
Yeah.
people that are dear friends of mine see me with my siblings and say, "Oh, I thought I was your best friend." I mean, you are my best
Mm-hmm.
friend, but that's those are my best friends
Yeah.
too, and I've known them all
Yeah.
my life. It's a little different. So that's what I'm talking about.
I think people have recognized that the sister bond is very, very strong and that they're so important to me. But I think either the friends are either wanting to join, they want to like hang out with all of us, or they just recognize that those are your sisters
Hmm.
and you guys are thick as thieves. And so,
Yeah.
you know, it's just kind of like they're my deepest best friends, but
Mm.
you're my best friend too, or my close
Right.
friends, and there's a place for everybody.
Yes, there's a place for
Yeah.
everybody. So you're traveling as a
Mm-hmm.
military kid from New Orleans to Puerto Rico to Texas.
Mm-hmm.
You're growing up in Texas, and you got this great sister bond. And somehow that translate into you building a career around intimacy, relationships, and sexual topics.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why you're here on the show, is to talk about these topics that are been labeled as taboo,
Mm.
but you're saying they shouldn't, and we shouldn't feel that way.
Right.
How did
Right.
your life pull you into this type of work?
Well, no, I always wanted to go into psychology and I started out wanting to work primarily with women, but I like to think it's that I'm comfortable talking about the topic because it would come up so often in therapy sessions with clients. And, they might come in talking about, I'm really struggling with anxiety or relationship issues or whatever they were presenting. And inevitably we would end up talking about their sex life because if you're anxious, that's going to show up in your sex life. If your sex life is complicated, that creates anxiety. So it becomes this little, like a cycle. And I think part of it is also how much of it is we've been conditioned to believe is taboo or not supposed to be talked about. And I think there's something really empowering about getting to know yourself at a really deep level, which includes how you show up at intimacy with yourself and with other people, even questioning like why aren't we supposed to talk about sex? Why are we supposed to know how to do it and enjoy it when it's okay and acceptable, but then not talk about it and it being shameful and not okay when it's not okay, right?
Hmm.
So that contradiction always really bothered me. And the idea of empowering people to ask questions of themselves and own what works for them and check in with themselves when they're following what they perceive as like the script of how it's supposed to look and it's not authentic. So I think it's just been an evolution of something I've already really fascinated by, and I think sex is such a human thing that it just became more and more interesting to me. And then I pursued it at a deeper level of, you know, getting a doctorate in clinical sexology, so uh, just took it seriously. And I wanted to educate it, not just on the human part of it, but like or the relational piece, but like the anatomy and what's happening within our bodies and our hormones. And so, yeah, I think it's just an extremely fascinating topic.
The older I've gotten, the more fascinated I've been about, well, I've always been fascinated about sex, but the intimacy part of it has always been interesting to me. But most of us don't grow up having open and healthy conversations about sex, desire, or boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
What messages do people usually carry from childhood or even young adulthood that end up causing problems in their relationships later?
Well, it doesn't often get talked about. And, I have so many clients, I'll ask them, well, who did you first learn about sex from? And often it's at school, and the presentation was scare the crap out of the kid, and instead of it being understanding how the body works, understanding the emotional piece of it, understanding boundaries, So a lot of parents don't talk about sex with their kids. So kids are learning it from school and friends, which are usually not the best experts on sex. That also creates the idea of like performance, because here's this guy or friend talking about their sexual experience and how somehow it went like perfectly. And then, that presents this idea of, oh, we should know how to do this, and we should
Hmm.
know how to do it really well, and also be emotionally connected and intimate. And so I think a lot of the issue is that it doesn't get talked about. And when things aren't talked about, the go-to is that they're not supposed to be talked about. There's something
Mm,
bad about them. There's something, we need to keep that a secret. And yet most people are having sex. So, what is something that's so human need to be a secret? Or they get
right.
shamed about it, and so.
You said something earlier about anxiety affecting intimacy.
Mhm.
And I don't know why that never crossed my mind before. As somebody who suffers from generalized anxiety, to think that anxiety would interrupt intimacy. That's one thing that can interrupt intimacy. But with your clients, you don't need to be specific. The older millennials, and we're the millennials generation that might be coming to you. Do you see issues with sexuality, intimacy, and desire as the rise of technology has opened up the door to, uh, I don't know if I can say this on air, sexually suggestive media? Yeah, that was a
Mhm.
good way to put it. Sexually suggestive media. And that now kids have access to it that older generations didn't at such a young age, that could be potentially warping their mind about what sex actually is and how it's
Mhm.
supposed to feel and be presented. Do you think that
Mhm.
there is a correlation between that?
Yeah, I do. I think that the social media and technology there's definitely benefits to it as far as like the access to information, assuming
Hmm.
that information is accurate. But it does, if somebody's watching something that's sexually related, even though somebody logically may know that that's not real, that this is a crafted, scripted, edited sort of thing, it doesn't mean that it doesn't create an influence of what is perceived the way it's supposed to look.
Hmm.
And often in those types of imagery, it's not emphasizing intimacy. It's not emphasizing humanness of it doesn't always go great. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes you're all in and then it changes. And so that piece gives them very inaccurate information, and also creates that performance anxiety, which is, I need to know what I'm doing. I need to be really good at it. Everything has to function perfectly and on cue.
Mm.
And that's just not how it works. So it puts a lot of pressure on people. I also think that with social media and things like that, yes, you have access to talking to people and whatever, but it's also created a lot of loneliness. People are not
Mm,
connecting in that sort of real time, spending actual time with each other. They're texting and sending back photos and things like that, which are probably like, edited as well. So,
d- that's really interesting that our form of communication now is texting. I know personally, don't call me. You can
mhm,
FaceTime me maybe, but I prefer a text. And
mhm,
how there's a lost connection in that. People have whole conversations through text messages, and then when they're in person aren't able to make that type of connection. I hear so many of my friends who are on dating sites that say they have these great conversations online through the dating site, and then once they're
mhm,
in person, it's crickets. So that's an interesting concept that I don't think people need necessarily thought about it. What could be a solution to a couple who might feel a little disconnected right now, uh, if they examine their communication styles?
mhm. So I think that what a lot of people are missing is just the curiosity. I
Mm,
think so many people are just making assumptions left and right, and they're operating from those assumptions. And maybe the assumption's accurate, but not necessarily, right? So you talk about the people that are comfortable with the texting, they're on a dating app and they're able to text. In that in that sort of communication setup, there's a lot less anxiety because you can edit. You
mm,
can you can take a little bit of time to think of how you want to say it. You can also have sort of well, if it didn't make sense, I can go back and change it because we can use the idea that text or email can be misunderstood, misconstrued, or whatever. When you're sitting face to face with someone, it's right there. They're right there in front of you, and you are kind of thinking on the spot. You can't take that pause or that edit. And I think that creates a lot of anxiety for people. So, a couple that's feeling disconnected, I think it's just asking questions, being curious, and not making quick assumptions about what
mm,
you think your partner is feeling or needs or wants. And you think about it in the sexual realm, a lot of people make assumptions based on what they think is happening in the sexual experience, and they're not talking about it. Like, oh, they sounded like they were really enjoying that, so that must be it. It's like,
mm.
maybe not. Maybe you
Yeah.
need to stop and ask, like maybe not in the sexual experience, but like at another time, like, how was that for you?
Right.
Do you like when I do this? Instead of, oh, I'm doing it perfect, and maybe you're not for that person.
Mhm. So I do want to get back to couples being disconnected, but I want to focus in on the person right now. You hear a lot of people saying all the time, something must be wrong with me because my desire isn't what it used to be.
Mhm.
From your experience, what usually really happening when someone starts to feel disconnected from that part of themselves?
Well, I think that first there's an assumption again that we're supposed to have desire all the time and that it's should be readily available, and it doesn't work that way. It's really responsive. So if we're stressed out, if we feel overwhelmed, and this could be just as a person, not even in a couple relationship, although the couple
Mhm.
relation plays a big part too, but just as a person, if you're stressed out, you're overwhelmed, you feel disconnected to your body, maybe something physically is going on with your body, and you feel like your body's betraying you. There's all kinds of reasons. Well, then desire's not gonna be there. And and I think so often people do not realize that our life circumstances absolutely play a part if we have desire to be intimate, sexual, receive, give pleasure, any of those things. So, and another big part is feeling safe. So if
Mm,
someone doesn't feel seen, safe, either with themselves and in their own body or in a relationship, desire is not going to be there. So a lot of times people will come to me and say, something's wrong with me. I don't have any desire. I could take it or leave it. The first thing I want to know is what has sex been like for them? Because or even if it's with themselves, are you experiencing pleasure? Are you having an orgasm? Is it, are you feeling seen in your sexual experience? And a lot of times they'll tell me no.
Mm.
I don't think anybody's even asked me what I want. I don't even know what I want. Those kind of pieces will play a part in desire and disconnect. So again, curiosity, ask questions. I can't tell you how many times that couples have come to me and, it's like they don't talk about sex. They could be doing it all the time, but they haven't had conversations about it outside the bedroom, but like what they like and,
You're
so.
talking specifically about like what they enjoy, not hey, do you want to do something? Hey, are you ready?
Mhm.
Not those type of questions, not that type of communication, but the communication of, are you enjoying this? Is there
Mhm.
something else that you would like? Is there something else that you would like to do? Those are the conversations that you're saying that a lot of these couples aren't having.
They're not having those conversations, but they're also not having conversations about what creates desire for someone, what
Mm,
gets them turned on, what do they need in order to feel connected. You know, those are all really important pieces. The idea of just being ready to go, it doesn't really work that way.
yeah.
I think that so it's not just what you like and don't like and what works for you in the sort of sexual experience, but even like what creates comfort and safety and feeling seen by your person that would even make you desire being sexual.
Yeah, that's so very, very important.
Mhm.
Sticking with couples and relationships. A lot of people in relationships end up just kind of going through the motions. You hear that all the time, especially for
Yeah.
people that have been in long-term relationships because they think that's what they're supposed to do, right? We've been
Mhm.
in this situation for so long. Let me go through the motions. How can someone tell the difference between performance intimacy and
Mhm.
actually feeling connected to their partner?
Well, performance is performance. They're not in their bodies, they're not experiencing their sensations, they're not attuned to their person, they're in the, "What am I supposed to do next? And what is it
Hmm.
supposed to look like?" And sometimes it's, "What's the end goal and how fast can we get there?" So the difference between presence is that you're authentically connecting. You're paying attention to what you're experiencing. You're paying attention to your partner as well. You're not thinking about end goal as that it's supposed to look a certain way. It's just much more organic. And there's a big difference there. If you're in performance mode, you're in your head and you're trying to sort of look and behave and do certain things you think they're supposed to be like, and that's not necessarily connected to what really does it for each of you.
Hmm.
So that shows up in the relationship too. When you kind of go with emotions, you're not connected. You're you're sort of performing a relationship, but not connecting with each other, getting to know each other, being curious, and we're constantly growing, right? So what someone was like when you first started dating them or first got married is not, ideally people, you want to grow, you want to have new experiences. And so it's a continuous like getting to know somebody.
Right. Like that growth pe- we grow, right? Like just naturally the evolution of human beings. You're
Hmm.
not the same in your 30s as you were in your 20s and your 40s as you were in your 30s and 50s. I'm 45 years old and I'm not even the same from when I was 42. Like there's been a jump and a leap from
Hmm.
there as well. I would assume that that would also apply to sexual desire, that that evolves over time just
Hmm.
with growth as a person, but also growth in a relationship. So,
Hmm.
what are some of the things that people can do? I know what you're going to say, communicate, but in what way? Because
Hmm.
how can somebody who might not even know that the desires that they used to have are not fulfilling them anymore?
Hmm.
How could they even recognize it if they don't see it and then find out this is what I desire? Like
Hmm.
how do you get to doing that type of work?
Well, I think it's also helpful to look back to what did work in the past.
Mhm.
And as a starting point, this is something we used to do. I used to enjoy it. it seemed like you enjoy it, that kind of thing. And then that opens up a more honest conversation of identifying the things that are shifting. And then as far as like,
Mm.
you know, again, just referencing what you've already experienced. What do you imagine? What do you think about? What just being open for those conversations. I think a lot of people hold back and they're, hesitant to share things that might help or might be of interest because they're concerned they're going to be, judged about it, or maybe they're going to feel embarrassed or all of those things. So a lot of people just kind of go through the motions without taking that little bit of a check-in and being, wondering, is this working for you? That question is a very hard question to ask.
Hmm.
It's, oh, I hope they don't tell me, no, this isn't working. In fact, I'm bored. That's scary.
When, if somebody ever told me that they were bored, I would get up and walk away and they would never see me again.
Well,
Bored? Wow. That
because
would
it
give
can
me
be
performance
boring.
anxiety.
Yeah, yeah. And that's, it's again, people get stuck in their routines and they do the same thing over and over again, and they expect it to be something that continues to work forever. And
Mm.
it doesn't. We've got to shift. Our bodies change. Our experience change. Those influence how we see ourselves. You know, over time, people might learn new things, feel more empowered, enhance their voice of what they want, what they need, and then everything starts to shift. And you have
Mhm.
to be able to have those conversations.
I know. Once again, somebody told me they were bored. That'd be traumatic. But
Yeah,
speaking of
let's not
trauma,
get there. Like, don't get to the I'm bored. Because if you get to the
yes,
I'm bored, you
I'm
have been
bored.
tuned out for a long time.
Oh my
I mean,
goodness. People hear the word trauma and
uh-huh.
often think it only applies to like extreme situations.
Right. Mm-mm.
But reading some of your information, you talk about how it can quietly show up in the way we feel closeness or
Mhm.
experience vulnerability. How does that tend to show up in relationships?
Well, speaking of traumas, people often think trauma and they think some major crisis, an accident, something. In reality, the trauma, the most impactful trauma is trauma that's slow and like continuous.
Hmm.
It's those little things. It's your partner not showing up for you. It's your partner not, you know, honoring your relationship, or all kinds of like these little smaller things of them not having time for you, not asking questions. Those are all little traumas that create the distance and disconnect and make it very scary to be vulnerable with someone. So that the idea is not, let's look for this one big huge argument that happened. Instead, it's the times when people don't show up, they don't keep their word, you know they make time for everybody else but you. These kind of little hurts that add up.
I I have married guy friends. I got to be careful how I say this because I don't want to be specific. Who have talked about their sex life with their wife and have said that they wish they could have it more often, that she's never in the mood.
Hmm.
And there's one friend in particular that said, I paid attention to the things that she was asking me to do around the house with the
Hmm.
kids, cleaning up, whatever it was, and then started doing them without her ever having to ask. Sex life has been great. So,
Hmm.
with that story, one of the biggest tensions, like I said, with my friends and couples out there is that they face when one person wants to be intimate and the other one doesn't. What are some healthy ways couples can navigate the difference without turning into blame, guilt, or pressure?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, you described a situation that's pretty common, and that is, you know this particular friend of yours started noticing the things that had obviously been continuing to go on, the things that happened in the house and the chores and the kids and the responsibilities. And then he stepped up and started doing some of those. That right there is showing that he's paying attention and that it matters to him. He's reliable. He's her partner. And that is a great aphrodisiac to like wanting to be sexual. It's like it's having a conversation, it's problem solving together. It's all these things that seem very non-sexual that actually lead to sexual desire because we're creating a sense of safety.
Mm-hmm.
I can count on you. You are my person. That leads to being more open to the idea of desire. And so
Mm.
it obviously your question was, how do you prevent the sort of whose fault it is? And I mean, I think don't have that conversation, instead going, how can we show up for each other better? And then there you go. And that starts, and then when that partner sees those efforts, that intentional effort, it means a lot.
So, ladies and gentlemen, did you hear that? Do not have that conversation. Pay attention
Mm-hmm.
to what matters to them. Are you saying without saying love languages?
Well, love languages exist. It's a real thing. I think they
Mm-hmm.
can change over time. I think that there is there is a definite correlation between love languages and sexual love languages. So knowing what your partner's love languages are, because it's not usually just one, it's, maybe the top two or three, and then being intentional to bring those things in, even if it's not your love language, even if it's not the thing you think about or feel the most loved by, that intention to bring those in goes a long way. So the partner you talked about is probably acts of service, right? So they were like, you're lightening my load, you're helping me out, you're noticing that I'm doing all these things and you're helping, you're taking on some of it. Yeah.
I think you dropped something that I'd never heard before. I've heard of love languages before.
Mm-hmm.
I know them. I've studied them. But did you say sex love languages?
Yes. Yes.
I've never heard of that before. Can you break that down for me and the audience? What are
Okay.
sex love languages?
It's like the love languages,
Uh-huh.
but they carry over into your sexual experiences. For
Okay.
instance, if your love language is words of affirmation, you
Mm-hmm.
really feel seen and loved when your partner says, I'm so proud of you, or you did a great job, or you're so attractive, whatever those positive things that resonate for that person. Imagine bringing those words of affirmation into your sexual experience. You are so hot. You're so good at this. This is the best thing ever. Da 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 da. Right? That's your sexual love language.
So
Okay.
yeah, definitely that would be cool, especially considering that your love language is words of affirmation. What
Mm-hmm.
not to say during sex if your love language is words of affirmation is I'm bored.
Or
Don't do that. Do
you've
not do
gone the
that.
opposite direction.
Yeah, that's a good way to end what's going on.
Yeah. Sex language is unnecessary because it's not happening.
Yeah. I've noticed a lot of people will complain about what they're not getting in a relationship, but they never actually say what they need. Why is
Mhm.
asking for what you want so difficult for so many people?
I think it's the fear that they're not going to get it.
Mhm.
I mean, think about it. If you identify what you want and then you bring that to the table and that person says, not going to do it, or doesn't even say anything, but just doesn't provide that thing that was important enough for you to bring up, that could be really a, a letdown, is putting it mildly. I mean, I think people are afraid of not getting the thing that they ask for, them putting themselves out there and being vulnerable to talk about what they want, and then the fear of it not being important enough to be taken care of.
So, in that same frame, in that same conversation, and going back to a previous question about boundaries,
Mhm.
some people out here, and I don't mean to make it gender specific, but I'm going to say men are going to do this. Okay.
Mhm.
Men are going to ask their partner for certain things sexually that might be beyond the scope of the boundary of their relationship. Some of them have been in monogamous relationships for 5, 6, 7 years, and then they want to try to be poly, right?
Mhm.
And that partner doesn't want to do that. So what what do you say to those people who might ask unreasonable requests in sexual nature? Should they still have those conversations, or should they re-examine what they're about to bring to this conversation?
Well, I think you need to understand why you're even considering wanting a certain thing, whatever it is, to go into a polyamorous relationship, open up the relationship, try new sexual, activities or things like that, to be curious about what's underneath that. I mean, if somebody wants to move into a poly relationship, that has its own context of what that looks like. And so, what is going on in the relationship that makes that even appealing? To
Hmm.
question that for yourself. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying, like, to question why that's something that's of interest. And then from that information to just decide if it's important enough for them to bring it up in the relationship, in their couple relationship. Obviously, you have to be thoughtful about what you're bringing up so that it's, I don't think you should keep to yourself the things that feel important or the things that you really are desiring. I think we need to be able to share that with our partner. It may not be available, you
Hmm.
know? I think people get cautious if I say that this is something that's of interest to me, they may misread that to mean I'm not happy in this relationship or I'm not
Hmm.
happy or satisfied in this sexual relationship. So I think that it needs to be presented in a way with assurance, but also this is something that I'm thinking about, and then having that pre-work of understanding why it's even of interest to you, be it a position or, opening the relationship to kind of a different setup.
On the flip side to that, what's some
Mhm.
advice that you could give to a person that's going to receive these requests to
Mhm.
not take things personally, to not go in that direction, well, something wrong with the relationship, and to actually hear and listen to what the person is asking?
Mhm. I think people have to be thoughtful about not going into defensive mode, which we do relatively easy because we're trying to protect ourselves,
Mm.
and to notice if we start to do that, but also just to be curious and have some compassion for the person who's sharing something that might be really uncomfortable to share, and there's courage in doing that. So, instead of going, "What, you don't think our relationship's good or you're not happy with him anymore?" Just to ask, why is that of interest to you?
Mhm.
What is, what made you think about that? What do you think would be like? Just start from curiosity instead of defensiveness.
The majority of the work that you do now, you said, is dealing with women. I specifically didn't focus solely on women because I know from a lot of conversations with men that a lot of men deal with these similar issues
Mhm.
that just don't talk about it. I know one of those issues is safety, whether men can actually verbalize that that's what it is. When they tell me, yeah, this is what's going on with my girl things or this and that, I'm like, oh, you don't feel safe. So
Mhm.
things aren't right. But focusing on women specifically now, for
Mhm.
generations, women were given very specific messages about sexuality, what's acceptable, what's not,
Mhm.
and what they were supposed to prioritize. How do these old narratives still shape the way women experience intimacy today?
Well, those old messages were that women were not supposed to be sexual, that desiring, enjoying, pursuing sex was not okay, that and that women were supposed to be taking care of others. You put
Mhm.
other people first. You put your partner first. You put their wants and needs and pleasure and whatever it is first or your children first. And so over time, I think that's shifting, where it's not that a woman is no longer considering their partner or their kids or taking care of the people they love, but bringing a little bit more of themselves into the equation,
Mm.
so that women enjoy sex. It's important to them. All of those sort of ideas of that women aren't supposed to be sexual is just not true. And so just creating a little bit more normalcy of that both men and women enjoy. Most people enjoy, not everybody, sex, and they have wants and needs. So those old messages, they have held on for a long time.
They're still here,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. And that
Mm-hmm.
leads to my next question. What is some advice that you can give to women out there who consciously or subconsciously, right, are still holding on to these old narratives? What's some advice that you could give to them to try and break free of that?
Mm-hmm.
And then what's some advice that we can give to men to stop judging women who are sexually free?
Mm-hmm. Sexually free. Okay, so for women, let's imagine somebody's coming to see me in my office and it's a woman and she is talking about not having desire. And as I
Mhm.
mentioned earlier, my questions would be, well, what's it been like?
Mm.
Why is it that you're not desiring this thing that maybe you used to do and maybe you are still doing, but you don't really want to? That brings up that information of what they're enjoying, and also the questions of, well, what is it you want? What do you want it to look like? How do you want to be touched? Or, and that brings up those questions that a lot of times they haven't even asked themselves. They're not satisfied, but they don't know what they're not satisfied about. It's just not this. This isn't a good fit. So I think that it is about just asking yourself honest questions, being curious, not judging it right away or judging it at all. And then as far as men, not having a concept of, oh, if a woman's very sexually free, that says something about her. They're benefiting the enjoyment of that sexually free woman as she's expressing herself and enjoying herself. And so there's definitely some positives in that piece. It doesn't enjoying sex, wanting sex, having a sexual vocabulary of what works for you is healthy. It's
Mhm.
it's living, it's being human, it's embracing our humanness, and it's stepping away from, instilled, conditioned mindsets that are not real. They come from a place of control and just a different time that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So
This question, it was forming in my head as we've been speaking, and I've been trying to figure out the proper way to ask this question. So we talked earlier about people carrying things from childhood and young adult life, and that could cause disconnect from desire and intimacy, relationships, and things of that nature.
Mhm.
I know of people who severely need therapy. Okay.
Everybody needs therapy.
Everybody does need therapy. Everybody needs to be able to feel safe and be able to talk to somebody. Everybody, to a professional,
Right.
to somebody who has actually studied how to help you,
I like
not
it.
your friend, right? People come to me all the time. I'm like, I'm not a therapist. I didn't go to school for therapy. Like, I don't know what to do to help you. But
Mhm.
there are some people
Mhm.
who need intensive therapy. I'm specifically talking to them.
Okay.
How do people first acknowledge the fact that they need to ask themselves those those honest questions that you were talking about,
Hmm.
and that they may not be able to give themselves an answer? They may need to talk to a professional to
Mhm.
help guide them to find the answer to that honest question.
Mhm.
What is your advice to them to just take that first step?
I think we all need to be able to ask for help. And I think that there's something very empowering in that. It's not a weakness, right? So if you're asking yourself, or you're attempting to ask yourself, like, well, backing up a little bit, if something in whatever category of your life does not feel good, whatever that version of not feeling good is, and whatever that topic is, that's a space to pause and ask questions like, why does this not feel good to me? Does it
Mm-hmm.
not feel good in my body? Does it not feel good emotionally? And why is that? And we may not have the answers. And that's the piece where it's like, maybe I need some help here
Mm-hmm.
because this isn't sitting well with me. And that is, we are always getting those messages, you know? And so it's tuning into that and going, why don't I feel good here? Why don't I feel good in this relationship? Why don't I feel good in my body? Why don't I feel good in this activity I'm doing, or whatever it is, you know, or a friendship even, right? It's like, I don't know, I'm just not feeling good here anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
be able to question that. We often don't. We ignore it. We kick down the road, if you will, you know, thinking, oh, it's just this reason, or making excuses. So I would say, you know, to be curious when things don't feel like they're sitting well with you, why that is. And if you don't know the answers, ask for help. And, you know, a therapist is great for that because that's their passion. You know, my
Mm-hmm.
passion is therapy and humans and the human, you know, how we live, but also sex and sexuality and how that influences everything. So, you know.
There is this thing that I know is real. I know it's real. I looked it up, I researched it, I said, oh, it's real. Asexual people.
Mm-hmm,
There are people who are asexual,
mm-hmm,
but I've also, from my circles of people that I know either intimately or not intimately, in groups, friends of friends, what have you, they've labeled themselves asexual. And I've said, well, like, have you actually done the work to find out if you actually are asexual, or are you just not having desire right now for various reasons?
mm-hmm,
Can you explain to people the difference between somebody being asexual and
mm-hmm.
somebody that's lacking desire at a specific moment in their life?
Well, there is a distinction. And first of all, asexual is not as common as people utilize the term.
Mm,
Someone that is asexual does not have sexual desire. It isn't something that is situational. It
mm,
is their constant. And the other piece about that is that, so if somebody's never really enjoyed sex and then they identify themselves as asexual, that doesn't mean that that's actually the case. It may be that they just haven't had enjoyable sexual experiences. Maybe they haven't done the exploration to understand what they really like and what works for them. And also, on top of that, an asexual person can still be in a sexual relationship and can still be in a romantic relationship. And I think that's the thing that people often get confused. If you're asexual, you're not having sex and you're not in relationships. That doesn't have to be the case. So the way to distinguish it is really, is it something that is your constant? Perhaps
mhm.
it's always been that way. You didn't kind of really understand why other people thought sex was something of interest or what they get out of it. It's those kind of, you know, it's just their constant instead of like, you know, every relationship has been difficult. I'm just not going to go there. Sex has never been enjoyable. So I just don't like sex. So that must mean I'm asexual. It's not necessarily the case.
Before I let you go,
Hmm.
we've talked so much about people finding the desire within themselves, finding the desire within the person. And it seemed like the overall theme was people need to talk.
Hmm.
If you wanted to give a parting salute
Hmm.
or monologue of a message that people should just be hammered home with to walk away with this interview. I know I'm putting you on the spot. but
What's
but
the perfect statement? I
yeah, not even the perfect statement. I don't
no
have the
such
perfect
thing.
questions. I go all around the place, but a statement or something that can really hammer home everything that we've talked about, because we've given people so much information. You're probably
Hmm.
gonna have to listen to this and watch this a couple of times and take notes, ladies and gentlemen. Take notes. But what is something that people should absolutely get from this interview?
Mm. Well, first of all, I think people latch on to that statement of that they're broken, something's wrong with them, and it's just rarely the case. And so I would, again, curious, take that term and really run with it. Be curious about yourself, about other people, about your relationships. Be open to asking questions. And the other piece is it doesn't have to be perfect. Earlier you said, "Oh, let me think about how I'm going to phrase this question." That I get that. Obviously, you're trying to
Yeah.
ask questions that are going to be really helpful and relevant and so forth. But that statement is often what people trip up on when they're having
Mm,
conversations with themselves or with their partner. I need to make it perfect. I need to say it just right. I need to, articulate it in a way that's not going to offend. All of these things. All that's helpful, but it often keeps people from out
happen.
there, talk it out. So I would say get over the I'm broken, something's wrong with me, and get curious. And don't think that everything has to be presented perfectly.
Dr. Stanley, am I to understand this correctly? You have a book coming out?
I do. It's called Nothing's Off the Table.
Mm,
And it is really about um everything should be available to talk about and put it on the table. It doesn't have to be perfect, just put it out there. And that includes our sexuality, includes our preferences. It also has a lot to say about debunking a whole bunch of myths that are out there that people have been operating from for generations. And so, it's kind of looking at the beliefs and myths that we are operating from, even the ones we're not even aware of, and questioning them and putting it all on the table and asking about it. So, yeah, and that comes out 1st of April.
ladies and gentlemen, look out for that book.
It's
All
gonna be
right.
good.
I'm going to get the book and I'm
Good.
going to read it.
All right.
Dr. Stanley, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. This was a extremely interesting conversation,
Mm-hmm.
extremely informative conversation. And I know I learned, and I know my
Good. I'm
audience
glad.
learned.
Oh, I
So
hope so.
thank you so much for coming on the show and discussing this very important topic that people avoid talking about
Mm-hmm. Yes, they do.
with just expertise and warmth.
Mm.
So thank you so much.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad to be here. I appreciate your time.
It was my pleasure. You know, one of the biggest things I took away from this conversation is that connection, real connection, isn't something that just happens because two people decide to be together. It's something that has to be nurtured, questioned, protected, and sometimes even rebuilt. We heard today how easy it is for people to get stuck in their routines, their assumptions, and most importantly, silence. And silence can exist even when two people share the same bed, the same home, the same life. You can be physically close and still feel emotionally miles apart. That's not failure. That's a signal that something needs attention. For women, that might mean giving yourself permission to listen to your own needs instead of consistently prioritizing everyone else's. For men, that might mean understanding that strength isn't just about providing or performing. Sometimes it's about being present, paying attention, and creating an environment where honesty feels safe. Both men and women carry expectations that were handed to them before they ever entered a relationship. And if we never question those expectations, we end up living out scripts that don't actually fit who we are. Relationships evolve because people evolve. The person you are today is not the person you were 5 years ago. And the same is true for your partner. That means the conversations have to evolve too. Curiosity has to replace assumptions. Effort has to replace autopilot, and empathy has to replace defensiveness. At the end of the day, intimacy isn't just about what happens behind closed doors. It's about how we show up for each other in everyday moments. The small acts of care, the willingness to listen, the courage to speak honestly even when it feels uncomfortable. If there's one thing to sit with after this episode, it's this. Connection doesn't disappear overnight. It fades when it's ignored, and it grows when it is intentionally nurtured. So take what you've heard today and reflect on it. Reflect on your relationships, your communication, and even your relationship with yourself. Because real growth starts with awareness, and real intimacy starts with understanding. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for watching. And until next time, as always, I'll holla. Woo! That was a hell of a show. Thank you for rocking with us here on Unsolicited Perspectives with Bruce Anthony. Now, before you go, don't forget to follow, subscribe, like, comment, and share our podcast wherever you're listening or watching it to it. Pass it along to your friends. If you enjoy it, that means the people that you rock with will enjoy it also. So share the wealth, share the knowledge, share the noise. And for all those people that say, well, I don't have a YouTube. If you have a Gmail account, you have a YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can actually watch our video podcast and YouTube exclusive content. But the real party is on our Patreon page, After Hours Uncensored and Talking Straight-ish. After Hours Uncensored is another show with my sister. And once again, the key word there is uncensored. Those are exclusively on our Patreon page. Jump onto our website at unsolicitedperspective.com for all things us. That's where you can get all of our audio, video, our blogs, and even buy our merch. And if you really feel generous and want to help us out, you can donate on our donations page. Donations go strictly to improving our software and hardware so we can keep giving you guys good content that you can clearly listen to and that you can clearly see. So any donation would be appreciative. Most importantly, I want to say thank you for listening and watching and supporting us. And I'll catch you next time. Audi 5000. Peace.